Welcome to our explainer. In the world of sustainability assurance, there's a huge shift happening right now. And if you work in this space, you've got to know about ISA 5000. So we're going to cut through all the jargon and show you exactly what's changing and, more importantly, what it means for your practice. Okay, let's just jump right in with the single biggest takeaway from the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board's latest update. If you remember only one thing, make it this. That old, separate standard for greenhouse gas assurance, it's gone. It has now been completely rolled into a new, single, overarching standard for all things sustainability. So, what does this new world actually look like? Well, the IASB has totally streamlined the whole process. They've moved away from that fragmented approach that, let's be honest, practitioners were finding really challenging, and moved to a much, much simpler, unified framework. At its heart, ISSA 5000 creates one single baseline for all sustainability assurance work. And it doesn't matter what framework an entity is using, IFRS, the European ESRS, you name it, this new standard is the foundation. It's designed to be universally applicable, which, you have to admit, is a massive step forward for global consistency. This slide really brings the change to life. I mean, look at it. Before, you had to juggle two different things, the very specific ISAE 3410 just for greenhouse gas statements, and then another proposed standard for everything else. Now, it's all under one roof. ISSA 5000 covers the whole shebang, including all that crucial GHG information. And because of this new one-standard approach, the IASB officially pulled the plug on ISAE 3410. Their logic was pretty simple. Everything essential from that old standard was already covered and in a lot of cases actually improved within the new, more comprehensive ISS 5000, so there was just no reason to keep a separate, siloed standard around anymore. So why the big change? Well, this wasn't a decision made lightly or in some back room. It was a direct response to a ton of feedback from practitioners, people in the field who are facing some very real challenges with that old dual standard system. Think about it. The IASB got all this feedback on its exposure draft, and it really boiled down to a fundamental question. Practitioners all over the world were pointing out the same practical problems of having a separate standard just for greenhouse gases, especially when that information is almost always presented as part of a bigger sustainability story. The feedback from the field was loud and clear. People found the two-standard approach just plain confusing. When does one apply and the other doesn't? It created a lot of uncertainty, especially when GHG info was woven throughout a report. And maybe more importantly, it raised the real risk of inconsistent work, leading to different levels of effort, different procedures, for what stakeholders see as just one report. And that undermines the whole goal of reliable assurance. So the board's response was really logical. First, they just acknowledged the feedback, they heard the profession. Then came this really critical mind shift. They stopped thinking of GHG emissions as this separate category that needed its own special standard. Instead, they reframed it as simply another important topic under the broad sustainability umbrella. And once they did that, it became obvious that a single, robust standard like ISSA 5000 could easily handle everything. Of course, if you're going to consolidate everything, you also need a much clearer, globally understood definition of what we're even talking about, right? If you're going to have one standard to rule them all, you need one crystal clear definition at its core. The first draft, the exposure draft, cast a really wide net with its definition. In trying to be super comprehensive, the board included economic and cultural matters right alongside the more familiar environmental and social pillars. The intention was good, for sure, but it opened up a can of worms. And stakeholders definitely pushed back on that. They said, terms like economic and cultural are just too vague. They create more confusion than clarity. For instance, how does economic not overlap with the financial statements? And what exactly is a cultural matter that you can provide assurance on? So based on that direct feedback, the IESBA went back to the drawing board and made a big revision to align with language everyone already knows and uses. And here's where they landed. The final standard uses a much more straightforward definition, fully embracing the widely accepted ESG framework. It's clear, it's concise, and it actually reflects how the market talks about and reports on these issues today. This change wasn't random. It was all about making the standard practical and usable. It got rid of the confusion around those fuzzy terms, it lined up perfectly with the global language of ESG, and, this is huge, it brought in governance as a core element, which stakeholders said was absolutely non-negotiable. It's just a perfect example of standard setters listening and responding. Now, it's really important to remember that none of these decisions were made in a bubble. They're all part of a much bigger push for global alignment. I mean, if assurance is going to be trusted all around the world, everyone needs to be working from the same playbook. This quote right here really highlights a critical piece of the puzzle. The IASB, the folks who set the standards for how we do the work, worked hand in hand with the ISBA, that's the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants. And here's why that is so important for you. This alignment means that the rules for performing the work and the ethical rules for practitioners are speaking the exact same language. It prevents that nightmare scenario where you could be following one standard perfectly but accidentally be in breach of another. You just can't have high-quality assurance without a foundation of high-quality ethics, and now they are perfectly in sync. So let's wrap this all up. What does this actually mean for your day-to-day work? Well, it really just boils down to simplification and clarity. You've got one solid standard for all sustainability assurance now. Greenhouse gas isn't some special case anymore, it's just another topic under the ESG umbrella. And this whole system is built on a globally consistent and ethically aligned foundation, which should give you and the people reading your reports a whole lot more confidence. And that really leaves us with a big question for the whole profession. Now that we have this stable, clear foundation in place, the focus can finally shift. It's no longer about just navigating complex standards. It's about truly pushing the boundaries on the quality, the depth, and the insight of our assurance work. Thanks for tuning in.